Look, more than anything else, what this deal signaled to Trump is that he should keep asking for things and pushing for things. What it signaled to the American people is that a small but critical minority of Democrats, the small but critical one, don't actually understand that we are not in the age of two parties negotiating rationally anymore, an age where everyone is working together to put out fires. We were once in that age. We are not there anymore, because one party is in fact lighting the match, trying to burn the building down. And pretending we are in normal times doesn't change that. This is about more than the shutdown. It's about, and this is why so many people are mad, including in Washington, including the majority of Democrats in Washington, because it's about Democrats not fighting with one hand tied behind their back, simply for the sake of a talking point about bipartisanship. It's about recognizing that we are in a different moment right now, a different moment that is going to require a lot of different things. Probably some different candidates, some different tactics, more aggressive, more alpha pleas, and probably different leaders. But here's the good news, and this is key. A growing number of Democrats inside Washington understand what this moment calls for. I wouldn't have said that necessarily in January. I would say that now. And more importantly, a growing force of people outside of Washington, because that is where change comes from, understand what this moment calls for. Which is why you saw Democratic candidates for Senate across the ideological spectrum all come out and oppose this deal.
I'm going back to Washington soon to vote no on this continuing resolution deal.
We got to do things very differently. The old way of doing things is not working. We need new leaders in the Senate.
You can't tell people that you're going to be fighting for their health care and then just fold and say, well, Donald Trump promised us he would help us fix it later.
My frustration is those who voted for it. It's not a long list, but I also have a deep frustration with leadership.
I'm here as governor of the state of Maine fighting to expand health care, while those in Washington apparently are ignoring the need and simply going along with the flow and letting those tax credits expire.
Again, all those people I just showed you are running to be members of the body that just voted to approve this deal. Some of them are running in primaries against each other, and they may have disagreements about all sorts of stuff. If you didn't see your favorite Senate candidate on that list, don't worry, because as far as I can tell as of now, not a single new Democratic candidate for Senate has come out in favor of this deal. The grassroots group Indivisible has taken things a step further, saying they will not endorse any candidate for Senate who does not call for new Democratic leadership in that body. This isn't, though, a story about Democratic infighting or division. We're talking about 8 people here. It's really a story about the majority of people running for office and a majority of people who are a part of a movement in the country recognizing it is going to require something other than business as usual in Washington. The energy to stand up to Donald Trump outside of Washington has not waned. If anything, it's gotten stronger. I mean, just today we saw more protests against the Trump administration in Washington, D.C. and Chicago, this time from veterans groups marking the Veterans Day holiday. And at the same time, activists and Democratic state politicians ramping up the fight against Republican attempts to rig the 2026 congressional map. Today, Republicans lost a key court battle over redistricting in Utah, bright red Utah, where lawmakers will now have to draw a new solidly Democratic congressional seat in that state. Now, hot off his state's redistricting victory last week, California Governor Gavin Newsom took the fight to Texas this weekend, where he drew big crowds of voters energized by the fight in their state. In Virginia, last week's election victories have allowed Democrats to move ahead with their own bill to counter Republican redistricting in that state. Also last week, Kansas Republicans stood down on their efforts to force a vote on redistricting there. In Missouri, a citizen-led effort to stop Republicans from redistricting is gaining steam. And in Ohio, state Democrats managed to limit the damage from Republican attempts to redraw their maps. That's just some of the examples from around the country. And all of that momentum has put Democrats on track to hold their own in a fight where Republicans thought they had the upper hand. And that brings me to the most important thing to remember right now. Because while all the Beltway media outlets are dusting off their old Democrats in disarray headlines, it's really just a way too easy, slightly lazy headline, I would note. The Republican Party is truly in shambles, and they seem kind of oblivious, or maybe just in some sort of a state of denial. I mean, things are downright crazy over there. The MAGA movement has been in a civil war over one of their biggest media stars embracing an overt white supremacist and anti-Semite. That fight has now torn apart one of the right's most influential think tanks after the president of the Heritage Foundation first defended the decision to engage with known white supremacists and then attempted to walk it back. I mean, it says a lot that one employee felt it necessary to publicly remind Heritage leadership that, quote, Nazis are bad. But that's apparently what it's come to. Also, with the shutdown over, Republicans in Washington are about to be thrust right back into their civil war over child sex predator and longtime Trump friend Jeffrey Epstein. Mike Johnson is now pretty much, I think, we'll see, out of excuses, and he's expected to swear in Democratic Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva tomorrow, giving Democrats the final signature they need to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And that comes just as we are learning that Epstein co-conspirator and convicted sex predator Ghislaine Maxwell has been receiving concierge-style treatment at her new minimum security prison camp. MSNBC reports that Maxwell is even receiving help from the prison warden with her application to have Trump commute her sentence. All of which puts Trump and his party in a pretty awkward, divided, disarray-like position. After all, his administration approved Maxwell's transfer to her cushy new digs. And now even the editorial board of the Murdoch-owned New York Post is demanding Trump end her luxury prison staycation. All this infighting is happening as Republicans continue to reel from their big election losses last week. An election that showed voters don't think Trump is delivering on any of his key election promises. They're in the doldrums and desperately searching for a way out. Just because a few Democrats voted to end the shutdown, and I shared what I thought of that, but that doesn't mean this administration has suddenly found its footing. It does not negate the enormous wins of last week across the country or the energy of the millions of people who have showed up at No Kings protests and other protests across the country. Trump and his party are still facing the same political headaches they were a week ago. The question now is, how do the people standing up to him keep the energy focused on that?